Zoological Park has been confronted with some accreditation concerns due to a drop in attendance as a result of a reduction in revenues. And this morning I have on the agenda a resolution requesting this board to support the endeavors of the zoo. Greta, I gave you the resolution to stamp. Could you give it back, please? I won't read everything that's listed in the resolution, but just enough to convey.
Mr. President, Supervisor Calhoun asked Beth to come to the board meeting today. Could we join them and instead of having her come up on my item, we can bring her up now and we can do the resolution and hear from the director at the same time?
Right.
That'd be fine.
Okay. The resolution reads, the Board of Supervisors of Hinds County, Mississippi supports the valuable contributions the Jackson Zoological Park makes to the care and conservation of captive exotic animals, as well as their important contributions to research, public education, and recreation. Whereas the zoo serves up to 167,000 visitors annually, with 47% from the Jackson metro area, 43% from other Mississippi counties, and 10% from other states, with more than 90% of its visitors being families with children under 12, with their accompanying parents or grandparents. The zoo serves every segment of the population, creating a wonderfully diverse audience. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Hinds County Board of Supervisors expresses a renewed dedication of support to the Jackson Zoological Park and their efforts in the preservation of animal, wildlife, and nature, and an invigorated attempt at fostering and preserving conservation projects. Moreover, we resolve to encourage the citizens of Hinds County to engage in programs, activities, and ceremonies that encourages public participation and awareness of the importance of the zoo in wildlife conservation. It is the sincere hope of this board that the Jackson Zoo will continue to operate in its present location, becoming a catalyst for change and the renewal of the surrounding community. So resolved and ordered this the 19th day of August 23rd, and I so move.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of?
Mr. President.
Question for Mr. Stokes.
Mr. President, if I could, I'd like to ask the director a few questions first.
Okay.
Thank you.
And when she finishes, I would like for the board there a letter pledge support for $10,000.
Yes.
Now, was that $10,000 coming from your reparation fund?
No, they will be coming from our 2014 fiscal year budget.
Okay. Mr. Stokes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President. Bev, again, I want to thank you for coming. Some years back, we had a conversation about the zoo, and we had a conversation. At that point, I suggested that the zoo spread out of the gates, and let's try to get an aquarium over on the other side of Park Place, Texas Avenue, where you got abandoned properties and things of that nature. And I think if I remember right, you said that the city owned the zoo and the property. And I said, I hope that your board would either do a study and bring it to the city to make those needed changes. It didn't happen, and I hear people complaining about the surroundings of the zoo. I live a rock away from the zoo. When I grew up as a young man, we used to get a lions roar. You know, that's a long time ago, but at the zoo, you had those kind of animals. The lions roared and those kind of things. Which probably happen now. We got to do something to help the zoo. That's not the question. Everybody know that. There's a plan to bring the, should I have the correct, medical corridor down Woodrow Wilson. Part of the plan and every presentation they have made was the zoo and the golf course. Now we hear people saying, well, let's move the zoo to, what's the name of it?
There's, the only thing I know is there's, in talking with the mayor of Jackson, there are 2 locations that have been presented, and I don't know if that has actually been formally presented, but 2 locations.
We only heard one, and that's the one over off of Lakeland.
Yes. Well, the other location is that, and I don't know if this has been verified, is the Lakeland Drive location and or another county.
Okay, now, this is, you don't have to worry about the zoo move to another county because it's Jackson Zoo, and we have a contract with y'all and all of that. So, the issue with Lakeland Drive is that, and I rode through there Saturday, going to see the activity at the museum. It's a shame that we're getting to this level in this city that people saying they don't want to come to the zoo because it's run down or it's black people over there. I don't think that y'all have a robbery or killing or anything like that at the zoo, but perception is there, I understand. But at the same time, if you move to Lakeland, then a lot of people not going to go to Lakeland because they don't feel comfortable at Lakeland. Now, 2 issues now. One is the medical corridor. Whether the zoo, the medical corridor, and the city can work together to make this a reality. Because the golf course and the zoo was part of the building blocks for the medical corridor. If we're going to have people coming from all over the United States and all over the world for this medical corridor, like they're saying. Now, in terms of the neighborhood, you know, anybody been to the Bronx Zoo in New York know that that neighborhood is worse than where our zoo is located, and it's steady growing. So we know the neighborhood is not a major issue when it comes to zoos. Now, how do we help you not lose accreditation? That's the issue I think we want to deal with today. At another meeting, another time, we can deal with these issues about safety and neighborhood. Because I still think an aquarium, that's what we need on the other side of the street. Because we take young people on trips all the time to Atlanta, to New Orleans, and we go to the aquarium. Young people love it. Older people love aquariums. Aquariums are good, but at the same time, we got to do more with the zoo we have now because it's kind of outdated and it's not as modern. You know, some people suggest the train. Let's take the train through the zoo instead on the outside of the zoo so that, you know, people can see more and do more. And finally, I've always suggested a free day. You know, Tuesday might be like, let's have a free day where people who can't afford it can come to the zoo. Let's get everybody on board with the zoo. Thank you, and I'll be glad to hear your response.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes, and Mr. President, Board Supervisor. Thank you also for the resolution, Supervisor Calhoun. I always enjoy an opportunity to talk about the zoo, so you have to watch when you give me a soapbox to address what's going on at our Jackson Zoo. I also want to introduce, we have our board president with me today, Mr. Eric Strassner as well. The zoo is indeed struggling. It's been a nonprofit since about the mid-'80s. It is on city property. What we've experienced is a drop of attendance from about 7 years ago, about 180,000, now to last year, about 117,000. One good thing that is happening this year, we are seeing, compared to last year, an increase again. We have an increase in comparison of about another 20,000 visitors. I think it's the splash pad. I think that in today's zoo, you want your families to enjoy all types of activities. It's not just looking at animals, even though animals are the main focus. You need to have special activities, and also in the Mississippi hot summers, we found the splash pad was the best thing. So we hope that with that continued investment, we can continue to do new things for children and families as well. The accreditation issue is a big concern for us. The number one thing that our accreditation team looks at when they come is, are you sustainable? Is funding there? Is Jackson ready to keep a zoo? I obviously vote very much so with them that yes, I think Jackson wants a zoo. I think also that the city is going to rally and increase a bit of its support so I can take that in front of the AZA Commission when I appear before them on September the 8th and share that as well. They're just looking for solid signs of continued support and that we can erase the debt that we carry. Over the last 7 years, every time we missed objections of attendance, we added debt year after year. We want to erase that debt with the city's support. We're looking for city support to do repairs and improvements. I appreciate what Hinds County already does with a lot of our improvement work. And the more support, letters, information, and also funding that I can take in front of that commission, that is how we'll hang on to accreditation. That's the main thing the board is looking at right now. We also are in the midst of a study with a consultant that'll go on for quite some time where we've looked at options and we continue to look at those options. Expansion at our current site is indeed one of those options. Looking at possible other sites, again, just an option. But the zoo has no plans to close or no plans to move. We need to continue with business as usual in the next year or so.
Okay. Let me do this. Let me go ahead and vote on the resolution. All those in favor of?
Yes.
Opposed to? Motion passes. Is there any other questions, comments, or statements from the board as it relates to this issue?
Just one final thing. Somewhere they brought up the issue of saying Ms. Wilson was not a member of that board, and I ran her down, and I know when I pointed her to Ward 3, she was excited, and she said she's still a member of the board, and that she comes to meetings and everything else. And I said it was reported somewhere that Ward 3 didn't have a member on the board. She said that's not true. So I guess I need to ask you to verify that Ms. Wilson is still an active member of the board.
Yes, Serena is a very active member of the board. We have 3 spots from city appointments still open, and that's 2, 6, and 5.
Not 3.
Not 3, no, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hunter, you have something, or?
You indicated there was other option sites. What site would be an option, and how much property? Because I understand that some of the animals you no longer can keep there because you didn't have enough space. I don't know whether it was the elephant or...
The elephant, what our issue was there is that we could not keep a herd. Again, this was in accreditation time. We could only keep 2.
Okay.
So it was indeed not being able to raise the $10 million to expand where we currently were. When I say looking at other sites, again, we're looking at, are we going to be a 30-acre zoo, a 50-acre zoo? But one thing that is definite is we are staying in Jackson. We are not looking at moving outside of it.
Because also I look at the zoo as a major economic impact. And, I know trends and time change and move and change is hard to adapt sometimes. But how would we fund moving to another site if that came down to that, to sustain it?
If I could address that question, I'm Eric Straisner, the board president.
Just speak a little bit closer to the
Yes, sir.
microphone.
Unlike the gentleman who sang this morning, I do need a microphone. I'm Eric Straisner. I'm the president of the board of the zoo, and I appreciate the question. Although, with respect, I would say the question is premature. We are not even analyzing what it would cost to move. What we are analyzing at this point is whether or not we can remain. And if showing the AZA we can be viable at the location where we are. The information that we have gathered is that for the metropolitan area our size, we should be attracting closer to 300,000 visitors. And right now we're at 117. This year obviously is an upward trend. So while there's a lot of chatter out there, obviously we're hearing it too, the chatter isn't necessarily coming from us, and I want the board to be very clear on that.
Thank you very much. We'll go back to Supervisor Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. President. In order to show additional support, I'm asking this board to grant the Jackson Zoological Park $10,000 to assist with pathway and walkway in the entrance area of the zoo. And I'm requesting that we set aside $10,000 in our 2014 fiscal year budget.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second.
Out of recreation fund, right, Mr. President?
I'm just joking. I see where you're going. Okay. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of?
Yes.
Opposed to? Motion passes.
Keep up the good work, man.
Thank you very much.
You can make it happen.
And
But then you went for accreditation a few years ago, right?
Every 4 to 5 years, yes.
Yeah.
And if you have a card or something where you can leave, because I have some ideas that hopefully we can do some things together.
I have a card in the packet that she passed out, and
Thank you.
I'd love to hear it.
Thank you. Mrs. Calhoun, continue. Betty?
We will forward the letter to you.
Okay. Anything else? Ms. Calhoun?
No.
All right, we'll continue our printed agenda. We'll now go to the Honorable Robert Walker, District 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to abbreviate mine as much as I can this morning. First off, we're going to delay the discussion on grants to our first meeting in September. Ms. Davis and I already talked about that. So we'll have our grant staff appear before this board at the first meeting in September. Secondly, and this is not listed with my items, but we have with us today the chief of the fire department at Byron, Mr. Robinson, and we did visit last week and talked about some things. And I'd like for Mr. President, this board to take up, if possible, the matter regarding radios in Byron at our first meeting next month, okay? To give everybody a chance to discuss it, think about it, and see whether, if anything, can be done to address his request. On Davis Road Park, I've been visiting subdivisions and parks and things like that, and I think that park has a whole lot of potential. It's going to require some work and everything, and I thought it might be appropriate, Mr. President, if it was the board, to just offer that at some point we probably need to get somebody who understands parks and come before this board and talk about the possibilities and benefits of a countywide recreation parks, recreation commission. You can piecemeal stuff and still not get anything worthwhile done. And this is not in reference to the $50,000 request for Edwards this morning, but we need something organized and coordinated. We don't have anyone on staff who has expertise in parks and recreation, and maybe we need to get somebody in who can talk with us about the possibilities and benefits of a countywide parks and recreation commission that could interact with established groups in the county. So I'm just offering that as something we could do in the future. But back to Davis Road in particular, there are 5 lighted fields out there that get no big use from the public. There are a couple of groups that may lease it for a month here or 5 months there, but I think we can get much, much more out of it, especially with those 5 lighted fields right there together and a concession center that we probably need to look at taking bids on the use of that, which could generate some funds to go back into recreation and for the benefit of the county. So much for that. The final thing I want to mention this morning, and I see Reverend McQuarrie here, who handles our permits and zoning, who I think has begun something quite good, and that is he's been working on subdivision regulations. And I wanted to offer this morning that the Board of Supervisors gives its total support to that, and that Mr. Perkins, who coordinates the whole fireside and is the acting Emergency Operations Center Director, work very closely, because we have to do something to make settlements in Hinds County attractive. And I think we can do that through focusing on the subdivision regulations, on the streets, possibly curb and gutter, areas set aside for recreation, especially in the more remotely located areas. And we have to do something about enhancing fire protection. I understand that there's a need to have lines, water lines that are at least 8 inches. Am I right on that? About 8 inches to make it attractive. If somebody builds a $800,000 house, you don't want a 2-inch water line that you can't get any protection from. You want something adequate that at least gives you a fighting chance to contain the fire and not let the whole structure. But there are a whole lot of things that need to be done to make them attractive. Now, one thing that I'd like to offer this morning is that there are a whole lot of big trucks going in and tearing up streets in the subdivisions. And we've got to make them pay the price. And we also, we'll get with Public Works, but I think some of these streets, some of these subdivisions need to have weight limits on the vehicles that can go there. And we need to make some people pay and have alternate entrances to these subdivisions. I know in most subdivisions, it's one way in, and I'm getting ready to finish, one way out. And they're tearing up sometimes good streets, and sometimes streets that are not done the way they should be done according to regulations that we really need. So I just wanted to visit, and I think everybody needs to come together on that. It will make settlement, living, development in Hinds County, the rural areas, much more attractive. We can build a better population base here.
Okay, so noted. Thank you very much, Supervisor Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President. While we deal with the issue of subdivisions, we had some people that was at our last meeting, and Mr. Freeman, we said we could have some information for them in terms of the road work that need to be done. Could you bring us up to speed how much you crunch the numbers to be for the help of that subdivision, please?
Well, for materials in
You need to come to the podium, and while you're coming, I'll just say to Dr. Walker, I believe that we did establish a recreation board with the county about 3 or 4 years ago, with each supervisor appointing one member, but we never followed through on that particular board. We did establish it, but no one was ever appointed, so we can check back through the record to see if we do that. Maybe go ahead and appoint that or establish that particular board.
Very good.
Okay.
May I say this before Mr. Felix responds to Supervisor Stokes?
Mm-hmm.
In some cases, there's a need for bridges in subdivisions rather than culverts. You know what I mean? I went through one where the culvert has just gone down. It's probably a 2-foot drop from the level of the street. And it would appear to me that there are a couple where I have seen some bridges that I don't want to drive across them. Okay, let me just put it like that. So a whole lot of attention needs to be given bridges and subdivisions and sometimes bridges instead of culverts that go through to hold things together. And I just want to mention that maybe as we improve the subdivision regulations, we can take those things into account.
Okay.
Supervisor Stokes, I think you're inquiring about Midway Estates.
Yes.
There's three roads in Midway Estates. That's Midway Estates Drive, Midway Estates Terrace, and Midway Heights. To repair those roads and resurface them, we have calculated it would cost $486,000. That includes materials and labor and equipment. But if it was just materials, it would be about $350,000.
Could you get with some of them here today, with them after you make your presentations, and because I know they said that they would try to even help with the cost, so we can find out what kind of formula we can use, and at the next meeting we can have some on the agenda to take a formal vote on, please.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, Supervisor Stokes, continue.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I'm going to bring up Mrs. Davis with Alignment Jackson. She's with the United Way, Nashville, Tennessee. They started a program, and it started with United Way to try to get the business community and the schools on the same page. And I think it's one city, maybe in Illinois, and Jackson is the third city. They're looking at Alignment Jackson in terms of education. And what I want to do is kind of let all of us know what's taking place, what we need to do, how can we make the school system better. Ms. Davis, please.
Thank you, Supervisor Stokes, and to the board, Mr. President. Thank you all for allowing me to be here this morning. What you have that's being passed out to you includes some material about Jackson Public Schools and the other school districts in our area in Hinds County. So I'd like to turn your attention first to that so that you can see what some of the numbers are currently in terms of graduation rates. I think it's very important that we understand where we are and what we're dealing with. These numbers came directly from Mississippi Department of Education, and they're for the year 2011-2012, so do know that we'll be receiving new data coming out in the next couple of months from the Department of Education. But currently, Jackson Public Schools is listed at 62.9%, and you'll find that in the far right-hand column under the 4-year graduation rate. We have word from the superintendent that that has actually increased to 64%. So we're looking forward to receiving some of those numbers later this fall. We also know that students who are reading on grade level by the end of 3rd grade are much more likely to graduate from high school, actually 90% more likely to graduate from high school, less likely to be incarcerated, and less likely to need public assistance. So we know that there are things that we can do early on to help our students succeed and graduate from high school. We know that the 62.9% graduation rate for Jackson Public Schools is indicative of all of the high schools that are in JPS. However, there are some high schools that have a much higher graduation rate, some scoring in the low 80s, and then there are others that have a much lower graduation rate. And so one of the things that I really want to impress upon the audience and upon the board is that this is not something that the school district alone can solve. This is something that is going to take the entire community to wrap its arms around our children and around our families in order to address. It takes more than a village to increase and improve graduation rates. And just to give you a little bit of background information, about 5 years ago, United Way embarked on a partnership with America's Promise Alliance, which was started by General Colin Powell and his wife, Alma Powell. And we believe, along with America's Promise Alliance, that children who receive 5 promises, the 5 promises, are much more likely to graduate from high school on time, prepare for college, work, and life. And those promises include caring adults, safe places, a healthy start, and effective education and opportunities to help others. So as a part of that work, Jackson, Mississippi was chosen along with 11 other cities, including Oakland, California, New York City, Nashville, Tennessee, New Orleans, Houston, Louisville, Kentucky, and others, to receive technical assistance from America's Promise Alliance. With that support, we were able to then conduct focus groups with about 165 parents and students in the JPS feeder patterns that we've been targeting, which include Supervisor Stokes, Lanier High School, Wingfield High School, and Provine High School. Those have been our targets for the last 4 years. Really trying to find out what can we do to support those schools, support those families in improving those graduation rates. We do know that both Lanier and Provine High School have actually increased their graduation rate over the last 4 years, so we're very encouraged by that and really excited about it. What we also discovered is that it really, in order for all of us to be able to work together, we need a process to do so. And that's what we were able to discover, as Supervisor Stokes mentioned, from Nashville, Tennessee. The Nashville developed a process for collaboration that was organized and efficient and allowed entities such as the state, the city, the school district, the chamber, county, all to work together and in coordination, and also provided a process for nonprofit organizations and foundations to be able to work closely with the schools in a coordinated effort. What has happened in the past in many different areas is that organizations have worked directly with schools, but sometimes on their own missions, not necessarily on what the school district strategic plan is. And so now what we've been able to do by developing a relationship with the district is to focus in on the strategic plan of Jackson Public Schools. And we are hoping that the rest of the community will say, how can we help to improve academic achievement by supporting the strategic plan of Jackson Public Schools?
Let me stop you right there. What you got is so good. I want to thank you for that. Mr. President, I asked her to come because this is an initiative that's really gaining ground. And the way they worked in Nashville, they got different business people to commit and work with different areas. I think one city, young people getting law, had that down in school, medicine, and like that. What we have, and I hope that you give a Reverend Starwood, because I think family court going to have to be involved with this, because, you know, when you look at these grades and the ranking of some of these schools, you would think everybody at the school had to be slow. But when you take the average, and like we say, 3 people in here, any 3 you want to take, the first row, 1 can make 100, 2 can make zeros, those zeros will make that 100 an F. So it's not showing the true character. You know, some of those kids who coming from a house with no parent, mom on crack, and no father, well, they pulling down other kids' school. And we beg the school system not to put those kids out of school, because some school districts, they put them out to keep the scores up high. Now, do you put them on the street and let them become gangster thugs and hustlers, and you're going to have to take care of them in your jail system, or you educate them? In some kind of way, I think the only way, and I Mr. Reverend Starwood a lot, is going to be family court, going to have to help. What you're doing is good, because we need to see raw numbers. We ask for them, but we very seldom see the raw numbers. We don't know. I don't know how many supervisors know. The graduation, not the rate, but the number of people who graduate from this school versus the ones that's not graduating. And, you know, and I hope we can get that information from you. But, again, we want to thank you for giving us an overview. And we'll bring you back, because we got other things on the agenda. But I think you'll do a good job on what you're trying to do. And keep up the good work. You're a young person, which makes it even better than trying to talk to some of these young people.
Thank you so much.
God bless you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in. Before I go any further, Supervisor Stokes, I'd like to recognize Representative Dixon from Bolton, who's here in the audience, and just wanted to tell her thank you. Representative Dixon, along with retiree, I believe it's Mr. McGinnis back there from Adams County. We still claim you, so there's no problem with that. Thank you very much. Supervisor Stokes, continue. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Calhoun. I'm sorry, Ms. Calhoun there, or light on.
Ms. Davis, I have a question, please. Let it just say when you walked up, Supervisor Walker proudly leaned over to me and said, "She's one of my students." I do have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Looking at the performance classifications It appears that our elementary schools are outperforming our middle and high schools. What can be contributed to that fact?
Well, I would first have to say that I can't answer that as a school district representative. But secondly, that we have to look at all of the different factors that are involved. So as Supervisor Stokes stated earlier, some things are family issues, some things are students not receiving the interventions that they may have needed early on. A large part actually could be contributed to students going from learning to read to reading to learn, and that usually happens between the 3rd and 4th grade or 4th and 5th grade. We also know that there are many families, unfortunately, that have decided to choose another school district home after elementary. And we also have many more elementary schools than we do middle or high school. So there are a number of contributing factors to that, but we have to have someone from the school district to really delve into that research to give us an analysis of it.
Okay. Thank you very much for all that information. We really appreciate it. Supervisor Stokes,
Thank you,
continue.
Mr. President. Mr. President, I want to thank Beth for coming from the zoo. So we've had that item. On number 3, Mr. President, I want to make a motion, and I move that we give Mr. Hawthorne a 90-day mosquito spraying contract. And what we want to do, that'll give us enough time to really look at a long-term contract for mosquito spraying. But currently, we don't have anyone spraying, and even though West Nile is not as bad this year as in past years, we don't want any person in this county to be bitten by a mosquito, contract West Nile, and then pass. So I so move that we give a 90-day contract out on pest control.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Mr. Walker?
I would think that, we'd like to see people in this community protected, but we want to make sure that we do things in accordance with the state law that we are required to follow. And even though it may be 90 days, I think it would be appropriate to put out an RFP for that abbreviated 90-day effort. And I would think, and I want to make sure that I'm following the law.
Okay.
Maybe the county administrator can speak to that, or the attorney we have can speak to that. I'm not, against awarding, something duly earned to anyone. But I just want to make sure that, our actions are proper.
If I can address the issue of state regulations, we have researched through staff that there are state regulations as it relates to emitting chemicals into the atmosphere. And so I'm not sure if this contractor is able to do that. We'll need to sit and speak with him on that and make sure he's aware of the regulations in providing this type of service for the
Well, I
county.
know Mr. Hathorne has been in business for years and has done a remarkable job. And I think I'm aware that he's certified to dispense with chemicals and all of that. My concern is with the process. What is the process that we have to follow in awarding even a 90-day contract to do service? And incidentally, Mr. President, well, let's finish this and I'll come back to that. So that's my question.
Okay.
Right. I know that Attorney General opinion was given to the county, and I will defer to the board attorney on that issue.
Previously, the board had requested an opinion from the Attorney General as to Previously, the board had requested an Attorney General opinion as to whether mosquito spraying was a professional service. And on March the 22nd, 2013, the Attorney General opined that a bid did not have to be taken for mosquito spraying if commodities were not involved. We were not purchasing chemicals.
I didn't hear that last part.
On March the 22nd, 2013, the Attorney General opined that as long as the county was not purchasing chemicals, only a service, that a contract for mosquito spraying would not have to be bid out. I think at the discretion of the board, there was a bid taken. But in the contract presented to the board by Mr. Hathorn, we're only purchasing professional services. But I would like for the board to pay attention to the environmental regulations as well in their determination to accept the contract or from any contractor.
Okay, what I'm really asking here is guidance on the difference between bidding for a contract and then offering a contract through an RFP. And even for professional services, I think there might be a need to have an RFP. So, and I'm just seeking guidance on that.
I believe the board has previously decided to go through the RFP process. And as a result of that process, we have the two vendors. And Mr. Williams and his office has done a good job in terms of outlining what those procedures are for the RFP.
Yeah. Well, it's, and I'm sure the board has done a great job in the past. We want to just, tune in on what the law is.
Okay. Mrs. Calhoun.
Mr. Clarence Williams has done extensive research regarding the regular EPA's, Department of Environment, EPA's regulations, and I would like to hear.
Mr. Williams, would you come to the podium, please?
Mr. President, members of the board, I have done a lot of research concerning
Speak a little bit directly into the mic.
research concerning what the board and the county would be required to do prior to discharging pesticides into the air. And there are a number of things like a notice of intent, which we have to provide to EPA and to MDEQ prior to allowing someone to spray on our behalf. The county is defined as a decision maker and a major entity because we would be serving a population more than 10,000. And along with that, we would also have to have in place a pesticide discharge management plan that would be based on surveillance and knowing where things are and what they are prior to allowing anyone to spray on our behalf. If we were to do those things without the proper documentation, we would be subject to $37,000 a day fine per incident. And that's just with EPA.
Dr. Walker. I'm sorry, hold just 1 second. Ms. Calhoun, are you finished?
Yes.
Dr. Walker.
Well, my question is, and I think we've gone through a number of things to reach the point where past meeting, I think this board was ready to offer a bid, a contract to someone who had done some work. So I'm sure you're knowledgeable about all that's required. My question goes right to the heart of what are we required to do in a situation like this? Can we just arbitrarily give someone, a contract, even with spraying? Or is there a requirement that we issue the RFP beforehand?
Mr. Walker, we did issue an RFP and we had one respond to it. But
For the 90-day?
No, I mean for a integrated mosquito management program, not just spraying. And even prior to spraying, if that was all you were going to do, you would still have to have the notice of intent and the pesticides discharge management plan in place before you could even authorize someone to do it on our behalf.
Because I'd be in favor of awarding if we met the prerequisites of the requirements for taking action.
Right.
So that's all I'm asking. It's not.
Well, we have not, on the county's behalf, we have not met those.
So, and how long would it take to do that?
Well, we would have to have a contract with someone to do all of that surveillance and other things prior to allowing the spraying to take place.
Okay, Supervisor Stokes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Hotchkiss to come forward, please. I know when we got an emergency situation before, we asked them to bail us out, and the same thing we're doing today. I think that's what we did in the past. And Mr. Hawthorne, you can explain to me if we're doing anything different today than we did in the past when you bailed us out with the short-term spraying contract. Is this the procedure we went with the folks up there? The next question, are you qualified? And I know this is an emergency because we treat it as an emergency. So, Mr. Hawthorne.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
What we're talking about now is different from in the past. Is the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System. We have worked with the city using this system for the last, since its inception. So what we have to do now, instead of just going out and simply spraying it, we have to justify if we have a mosquito problem. That is done through surveillance, trapping. And you all know that we have a mosquito problem. So that's really not a problem. It is not a problem to obtain that permit that's necessary. It's a simple process, and we have dealt with it for the last 2 years. And what it simply says is, if you are going to spray more than 6,400 acres of territory, then you must get a permit, you must have a pesticide management plan, and you must keep records. The person that's the contractor must keep records as to what chemicals he's using, what type of chemicals he is using, the area where he is doing servicing. We must keep good maintenance on the machines, calibration. Let me see what else. There's a number of things that we already do on the FIFA, which is it regulates where we put chemicals, the kind of chemicals we put out. This is normal for us in this business. A lot of things have been said about this discharge act, but it's not as complicated as it's been made to be. Now we have been in the pest control, the mosquito abatement program for 25 years.
Yeah, at least.
And that's just on the mosquito abatement. We've been citizens, Hawthorne Pest Control have been citizens of Hinds County for 36 years. Of that 25 years in the mosquito abatement, we have not had not one violation, not one infraction, not one warning. This can be verified through the Bureau of Plant Industry's website. We wouldn't dare do anything to jeopardize your finances, because that would be kind of like, for us, going out, killing the goose, that lady golden egg. We would be killing our own customers. We wouldn't do that. So, in other words, let me just conclude by saying this. It has not been, as the young lady said, there's not been a change in state law. This is a professional service. There's no bid requirement. That's what Dr. Walker. There's no bid.
And let me just set the record straight. I never questioned whether you were reputable or not, because I indicated earlier that, you had done a good job and all of that.
Yes.
So, I just wanted to clinch the record on that matter. What I think is at stake here is whether what we want to do is being done properly. For example, correct me if I'm wrong, if someone is hired to do something as an emergency, you have to first declare an emergency. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
An emergency has to be declared. And then, once declared, then go to take whatever actions that you are. Now, we are at a point in the fiscal year, less than a month before our budget for next year has to be approved. And we would think that even with a professional service arrangement, that we would want to know what is it going to cost us, okay? And I'm just going down the road, and I think public officials need to go down. At least this public official feels that he needs to go down that road. So it would appear to me now, if there is an emergency, why not declare the situation documented that it is an emergency? And then you take whatever other actions are necessary and appropriate after that declaration.
Okay, go ahead.
Let me speak to this cost factor. The county have two proposals. One will cost the city $70,000 more a year. Our proposal will save the taxpayers of Hinds County that much money over. And we have had that proposal in since last year.
The one that we received this morning?
Since last year. We have not changed. Only thing that will change on that is the date. The other proposal that you have received was around $19,000 a year. Our proposal from last year was it was $19,000 a month. Now our proposal has been on the table since last year, and it's been $17,065 per month. Now we have served the city, the county, many years, and have given satisfactory service. We would like to continue that service. With no violation, no citizen has been harmed, and thank goodness this year we only have 3 cases of West Nile. So we would think that the best that we could do now is eliminate as many of these mosquitoes before next spring. This 3-month contract will go a long ways in doing that, and then it would then give you a time to decide what you really want to do for the full year next year.
Well, yeah, and I'm sure you will understand me, but I got here this morning. These 2 documents were provided to me. I had no idea prior to looking at the agenda that a contract for mosquito spraying would be a matter that came before us. So I'm really cold, and you have to look at the procedural aspects of it, whether it's following the procedures that we are supposed to follow. And I think maybe if it's an emergency, the declaration that there's an emergency needs to be made.
Okay. Any other comments from Mrs. Callen?
Yes. The county requested in RFP a proposal, I believe about a month ago. And that proposal is still on the table. So this board either needs to reject that proposal or move to accept the proposal.
I believe, if you remember correctly, about 2 meetings ago, the board did reject that proposal.
Okay, I didn't recall.
It rejected that proposal about
Did we go
2
back
meetings
out
ago.
with RFP?
No, ma'am. No, I think the board wanted to further consider the RFP issue because there was only one bidder. So the board had questions on that, and I guess there was further discussion on how we're pursuing this.
Okay, I was absent with that.
Okay.
So what do I do?
Thank you very much. Any other questions for Mr. Hathorn? Thank you very much.
Yeah, one question.
Supervisor Hunter.
You mentioned 6,400 square acres.
6,400 acres.
At that threshold, 6,400 acres, how many acres are we anticipate on spraying under this proposal?
Under this 3-month proposal, we would surpass that 6,400 acres. And you would need a permit, and you would need a mosquito discharge management plan, which this is the one we had for you last year.
And that was suitable for the 6,400 acres?
Now, the reason why you didn't have to get a permit because it was under 6,400 acres for this 1-month treatment. However, to protect and do the best job for the county, we prepared this pest control discharge management plan and delivered to Mr. Felix. We didn't have to do that, but we wanted to take the precaution that would protect you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Hathorn. Mr. Williams, if you would, I just have one question. Would you restate or make it clear to me what would we be doing if we did this? Are we in violation of anything? That's the only question that I have.
Well, again, without doing the preparatory work that would be required to request the notice of intent or even the pesticide discharge management plan, that would have to be based on surveillance. And to my knowledge, that has not been done by anyone.
Okay.
Mr. President.
Mr. Stokes?
Mr. Williams, is this not the same thing we did last year? The same thing we're doing today, did we not do the same thing last year?
I don't remember us doing anything last year, sir, but the
RRs don't need you spray last year?
No, sir. Yes, sir.
Would you please come up here and tell me he forgot?
Let me say this. Getting this permit, it's really not a issue. You can get this permit within less than a week. And you can do the surveillance in a day's time. It's not as complicated as it's being made, seems being made. Now, what we're talking about is really the health and well-being of the citizens of Hinds County. And I want you to know that the federal government will do everything they can to help that process as fast as they can. Now, the surveillance, I mean, really, everybody knows there's mosquitoes in Hinds County. So that's not the issue. You need mosquito control services. And look at all the other counties that cities around here. They're doing something to aid their citizens. Why Hinds County is not is a question that people asked last year, and that's the very reason why we did the service last year for you for 1 month. So we can do it. It's legal to do it. It's not necessary to put it out to bid because of professional service. So if you want to do it, you can help the citizens of Hinds County by acting, and we would work with your administration to get all the permits necessary, and we would have that done within a week. Thank you.
Mrs. Calhoun? Let Ms. Calhoun go
I
ahead.
was going to ask just that question, whether or not you have a permit and what are your plans for, if you have any plans for obtaining a permit.
It's not for me to have a permit. I have a license. It is for you, the entity of Hinds County, to obtain that permit. It's for me to provide you with a mosquito management plan, which I did it last year. I can do it again this year. And like I said, this can be done within less than a week's time. The people that issue the permit want to help you do it. So it's not a big deal. They want to see people saved. They want to see people happy.
Okay, Dr. Walker.
Quickly, Mr. Williams,
Yes, sir.
how long would it take for you to do what you said needed to be done?
That was something that we had left up to those who bidded for at least respond to the RFP. I personally don't know how long it would take because you'd have to do these RON and the pesticides discharge management plan. It requires that whomever's doing it go out, do some sampling, do some surveillance, locate where those areas are, determine what's necessary based on what you find there, because not all mosquitoes carry the West Nile, not all of them are the same. So without knowing exactly where those things are, what you have to do, just to allow somebody to just spray willy-nilly would not be the best thing I would advise the county.
Is it the county's responsibility or the company's, pest control company's responsibility to obtain the permit?
It's my understanding that it is the vendor who would get a permit to do those things, but they would do it at our request, as being the decision makers who decide to spend the money.
Okay. Let me go with Dr. Walker, then we'll come right back to you, and then we'll wrap this up. Go ahead.
Because I was going to offer some work for her and the attorney to do.
Okay.
You know, we need to move forward, and we need some answers. We need answers from the people who have been hired to give us answers. So, what if Ms. Davis and Ms. Prince, the attorney, could get together and find out what we need to do and how soon we can do it, and get that answer back to this board today, if possible, before we break up or adjourn, so that if it's action we need to take and can take today, we can go on and do it. But I think that's what we need. What can we do about the question that's before us right now? I'm ready to take action or to vote, but I want to make sure that it's in order.
Okay. Ms. Davis, you want to answer that? Then we'll
offer, Mr. Stokes.
That we lay it to the side. Hold on 1 second. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add to the question earlier.
Speak a little bit closer to the mic.
I was just going to add to the question earlier about the service for last year. From my understanding, Mr. Hawthorne provided services for 1 month. But I want to make sure the board knows that upon your request to pursue an RFP, we did further research as to the type of services or requirements related to the service what we need to consider. And so that brought us to where we are. The knowledge that we have today, we did not have last year.
Okay. Mr. Stokes, is it within your purview to hold this, or what do you want to lay it to the side, or do you until further notice, or today, or how would you like to handle it?
Votes ain't gonna change. You know, they can talk a pretty game. Votes gonna stay the same. We wait a month, it's gonna be the same thing. They'll find other issues not to give it to us. The man been spraying forever in this county, and now all of a sudden he's not qualified. You know, it makes no sense to me. I do whatever. I'm ready to go for it. I got a motion on the floor. I don't think I need to sack him. If we vote today, you're gonna try to vote it down. If we vote next month, you're gonna try to vote it down. So nothing's gonna change. It ain't that he ain't qualified. Everybody in here know he qualified. He's spraying for the city of Jackson right now. Been spraying in Hines County the whole time. Now we got, this ain't right and that ain't right. Legal gave an opinion. Professional service, we can do it. It's not our first time doing professional service. So I'm ready to move forward. I got a motion, Mr. President.
Okay. It's been moved. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor of?
Yes.
Hunter. All those opposed to? Nay. Ms. Gallup?
Nay.
Okay. 2 for, 3 against. The motion fails. Okay. All right. Let's continue on. Supervisor Stokes.
Mr. President, we have the fine mayor of